ladies and gentlemen of the Urban League, please join me in welcoming to the Urban League Conference here in Cincinnati, Dr. and Senator Rand Paul. Please give him a warm round of applause. Rand Paul.
Thank you. Good morning. They got us up early this morning. I'd like to thank the Urban League for letting me speak today, specifically Mark Morial and Donna Jones-Baker for your hospitality and the warm reception that I've received. All Clyde Canard wanted was an education. But being black in Mississippi in the 50s, nothing was easy. All he wanted to do was go to college. But instead of getting into college, Clyde got into trouble. Clyde was released a few months after I was born. So I read about his story and didn't know about it personally, and don't know about these events personally, but only through history. But he was imprisoned for the crime of wanting an education. The first time he tried to enroll at Mississippi Southern, the police planted liquor on him and jailed him and fined him $600. The second time he tried to enroll at Mississippi Southern, he was arrested on trumped-up charges of stealing $25 of chicken feed from his repossessed farm. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. 7 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. A man of lesser character would have been bitter. Canard responded, though, from a higher plane. He wrote, "We have no desire for revenge in our hearts. What we want is to be respected as men and women, given an opportunity to compete with you in the great and interesting race of life." Clyde Canard didn't live to see the civil rights era. But when I think of Clyde Canard, I am reminded of the challenges we still have with criminal injustice in America. I'm also, though, encouraged to keep talking, working out solutions, looking for answers. 3 out of 4 people in prison right now for nonviolent crimes are black or brown. Our prisons are bursting with young men of color, and our communities are full of broken families. Yet studies show that white kids use illegal drugs just as much as African Americans or Hispanics. But why are so many men of color, so many young men of color incarcerated? Because frankly, it's easier to arrest and convict poor kids in urban environments. The problem is compounded when we give federal grants issued based on conviction rates. A new study shows that from 1980 to 2000, the number of children with fathers in prison rose from 350,000 to 2.1 million. There is a cycle of poverty that often leads to drugs, to debt, and to prison. In prison, child support can accumulate into the thousands of dollars. Released from prison then finds that employers don't want to hire a convicted felon. With few options of real work, the cycle begins again. I say enough's enough. I won't sit idly by and watch our criminal justice system continue to consume, confine, and define our young men. I say we take a stand and fight for justice now. As a Christian, I believe in redemption, and I believe in second chances. I agree with the President's commutation of sentences for people who are still trapped in prison for crack cocaine. I've told him this personally. I talked to him last week and said, I will help in any way I can. The disparity, though, in sentencing between powder and crack cocaine is now less glaring than it used to be, but there's still a disparity. We should free those sentenced under the old guidelines. In addition, I want to go one step farther. Today I'm announcing legislation that will be introduced today that eliminates any disparity between crack and powder cocaine. We should also go a step further. We should give judges the discretion to find just sentences. Mandatory minimums have been used to incarcerate nonviolent drug users for decades. One young man, Weldon Angelos, was given 55 years in prison for selling marijuana. You can kill someone in Kentucky and get out sooner. I say it's time we restore sanity to sentencing by ending mandatory minimums now. To find justice, we must rethink our whole approach to the entire war on drugs. Just this last week, Cory Booker and I came up with one solution. We have legislation that expunges nonviolent felonies from a person's record. One of the biggest impediments to employment is checking a box that says you're a convicted felon. I have a bill that reclassifies many of these nonviolent felonies as misdemeanors. We still have some problems, though. I know that we've come a long way, but there still are problems. In President Obama's election, a higher percentage of black voters actually voted than white voters in many states. This is a good thing. It's a testament to how far we've come. But obstacles to voting, though, still exist. Probably the biggest obstacle is having a felony record. In my state, once convicted, you never get your voting rights back. I've got a friend whose brother 30 years ago grew marijuana plants in college. He still can't vote. He still has trouble getting employment. 30 years later, he's got a family and kids. He's changed. He was a kid. He made mistakes like so many of our kids. Nationwide, 5 million people are prevented from voting because of their criminal record. It's the biggest impediment to voting in our country. I want more people to vote, not less. I support reauthorizing the 1964 Voting Rights Act. Because despite our progress, there are Clyde Canards today who can't fully access the franchise because they're handicapped by either educational or judicial systems. Not only do I support the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, I'm a Republican who wants to restore a federal role for the government in the Voting Rights Act. I study the Constitution. I'm a big supporter of the Constitution. I talk about whether things are constitutional or not. And I am committed and determined. I am a committed and determined advocate of the 14th Amendment that states unequivocally, no state shall deny equal protection or due process. No state shall deny the natural rights of anyone. The Bill of Rights protects you from abusive government, whether it's the federal government or the state government. I testified last year in my state before the Kentucky State Legislature for restoration of voting rights. I've also introduced federal legislation to restore voting rights once people have completed their sentence. This is actually now co-sponsored by the Democrat Majority Leader, Harry Reid. Those who have known injustice, though, should be at the vanguard of the fight to protect all of our civil liberties. If you're a member of a group that has ever felt the sting of injustice, your voice should be loud and clear. Tragically, Congress, about a couple years ago, passed legislation that allows for the indefinite detention of an American citizen without a trial. In the debate on the Senate floor, I asked a fellow senator, I said, does this mean an American citizen could be detained and sent to Guantanamo Bay forever? And he responded, yeah, if they're dangerous. I couldn't believe my ears. I said, sort of begs the question, doesn't it? Who gets to decide who's dangerous and who's not? Anybody remember Richard Jewell? Everybody said he was the Olympic bomber. Within hours, he was convicted on TV. Only problem was he didn't do it. But think for a moment. Ponder what might have happened to Richard Jewell if it had been a black man in 1920. This is why you have to support the right to a trial by jury, the right to have a lawyer because people are falsely accused. Who are the people that are falsely accused? People who are minorities. But you can be a minority because of the color of your skin or the shade of your ideology. There's many ways you can be a minority. We have to be together to defend rights of all minorities. Martin Luther King understood this. He understood that injustice can be heaped upon any kind of minority, not just a racial minority. Dr. King wrote from the Birmingham jail of injustice. He wrote that an unjust law is a law that is made binding on a minority, but not on a majority. Our nation has come a long way since the civil rights movement, but we must realize that race still plays a role in the enforcement of the law. Just ask Ralik, Daquan, and Wantaj. They were just standing on a street corner up in the Northeast when a policeman arrived on the scene and told them to move on or be arrested. What was their crime? Some have written and said, well, maybe their crime was waiting while being black. The boys explained that they were waiting on a school bus to take them to their game. They were handcuffed and taken to jail because they wouldn't move on. Anyone who thinks that race does not still, even if inadvertently, skew the application of criminal justice is just not paying close attention. Whether you are a minority because of the color of your skin or by virtue of your political or religious persuasion, it's imperative that we restrain the power of the majority. Our founding fathers didn't get everything right, but they understood that we wanted government to be restrained because of the potential for abuse. Patrick Henry understood this when he wrote that the Constitution was intended to restrain the government, not the people. The recent revelations that the government's collecting all of our phone records should give us pause, particularly given the history of the civil rights movement. Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech inspired the world, but it also prompted the FBI to tap his phone illegally and spy on tens of thousands of Americans. Today, all Americans should be concerned that the government is collecting the records of millions of Americans. Frankly, I think what Americans do on their cell phone is none of the government's damn business. Malcolm X wrote, "Nobody can give you equality or justice. If you're a man, you take it." I say the time has come for all of us to take and secure justice for all. They say education is the great equalizer, but all schools aren't equal. Many of the schools in our large cities are functioning with low standards. Many of the schools have become dropout factories. Some schools lack discipline and are unsafe. I say the status quo is unacceptable. But Washington has no clue how to fix this problem. Washington has no clue how to fix education. Washington doesn't know whether you're a good teacher or a bad teacher. We should allow innovation to occur at the local level. I propose that we allow school charters, school choice, vouchers, competition. Competition breeds excellence and encourages innovation. And boy, we really need it. We need innovation. My kids went to great public schools. I went to great public schools. The president's kids go to great private schools. There are a lot of choices out there. I want to make it where all Americans get the option of choosing the best school for their kids. If we're to fix the criminal justice system, fix our schools, we must also fix long-term unemployment and the cycle of poverty. Detroit has nearly 20% unemployment, but so do many counties in the rural part of my state, in Appalachia. I propose that we try something no one's ever really tried before. Let's try a stimulus that works for everyone. A stimulus that leaves more money in the local economy. Let's leave more money in Detroit. I'm not talking about sending money from Atlanta or from Houston to Detroit to bail them out. I'm talking about leaving more money in Detroit that originates in Detroit. This stimulus would come from not sending the money to Washington. This would simply come by allowing money to stay at home. The poverty problem, it's not new, and it's not going away easily. Black unemployment's still twice white unemployment. And I don't accuse the president of not caring. I think he does care. But that's why we have to talk about policy. It's not just about caring. I think there are people in both parties who care. But frankly, we got to come up with a policy that does better. Detroit's still failing despite having people who do care. I have a 10-year plan for areas of high unemployment and poverty to lower taxes and promote employment. My plan would leave $1.3 billion in Detroit over 10 years. It'd leave over $1 billion in Appalachia over 10 years. How's this different from a government stimulus? In the past, what we do is government takes the money from the people, sends it to Washington, and then gives it back. But they have to choose who to give it to. So sometimes the money they give is to small businesses that fail because often the wrong people are the ones who get the money. So what I say is, in my plan, the government doesn't choose who gets the money. You choose. The money goes to businesses that the local consumers have already voted upon and chosen to succeed. We just want them to succeed more. The businesses that provide the most jobs will get the biggest reduction in taxes. I call this economic freedom zones. I think it could transform the poverty problem in America. Republicans, you know, they say we're sometimes accused of believing in no government. To point out this fallacy, I often joke that I'm for $3 trillion worth of government. I'm for spending what comes in. What sometimes separates us, and we get, I think, falsely portrayed, is that I'm just not for borrowing money from China to pay for our daily expenses. It's not good for the country. It drags us down and it creates the unemployment problem. But if I had my way, not one penny would be altered from the safety net before all corporate welfare is eliminated. Last year, we gave $20 billion in corporate welfare, in subsidies to big business. In fact, we gave the top 100 corporations an average of $200 million each. In addition, we gave another $20 billion in loans to big business. For America to thrive again, Americans have to have meaningful jobs again. We need to consider ideas we haven't considered before. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've been trying the same thing over and over again in education, in combating poverty, and combating drugs. I say let's look to the horizon. Consider that maybe we need some fresh ideas to combat old and festering problems. As a physician, I was trained to diagnose the problem and find a solution, not worry about which party it came from. As a legislator, I try to do the same. My hope is that each of you will work with me to find solutions that aren't hung up in partisan politics, and that together we might rise above a dysfunctional Congress and do what's right for the country. I thank the Urban League, I thank you, and I hope we can work together to find some new solutions. Thank you very much.